Du Bois. The Year of Du Bois with Dr. Anthony Montero. Class is in session. If you're calling up, please be calling about Du Bois. Don't call asking about grass-fed turkey or nothing else. Take it away.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's great to be here, Professor and Kawesa. And I just want the audience to know that I have two members of the Year of Du Bois in the Saturday Free School in the studio with us. They're twins and they're students at Temple. They're Jake and Serafina Harris. Jake is an actor. He does Shakespeare and Lorraine Hansberry.
Wow.
And Serafina is a singer, a painter, and a history major.
Okay,
and
Temple.
She sings everybody from Nina Simone to Aretha Franklin. So I mean, really,
Might end the show with some singing.
yes. So two of our bright stars from the Saturday Free School. But last week I read from the Souls of Black Folk the chapter entitled The Sorrow Songs, where we talked about that great body of music produced by Africans under conditions of enslavement here in the United States. Du Bois called those songs the rhythmic narrative, the poetry of a disappointed people, which is, I think, a generic definition of what the blues is. But today I want to read from another chapter from the Souls of Black Folk entitled Of the Faith of the Fathers, and this is an interrogation, an investigation of the African American ethical and spiritual life. So let me begin. After emancipation, and still earlier in the North, the Negro churches largely severed such affiliations as they had had with the white churches, either by choice or by compulsion. The Baptist churches became independent, but the Methodists were compelled early to unite for purposes of episcopal government. This gave rise to the great African Methodist Episcopal Church, the greatest Negro organization in the world, to the African Methodist Zion Church and the Colored Methodists, and to the black conferences and churches in this and other denominations. The second fact noted, namely, that the Negro Church antedates comes before the Negro family, leads to an explanation of much that is paradoxical in the communistic institution and in the morals of its members. But especially it leads us to regard this institution as peculiarly the expression of the inner ethical life of a people, in a sense seldom true elsewhere. Let us turn, then, from the outer physical development of the church to the more important inner ethical life of the people who compose it. The Negro has already been pointed out many times as a religious creature, a being of that deep emotional nature which turns instinctively towards the supernatural, endowed with a rich tropical imagination and a keen, delicate appreciation of nature. The transplanted African lived in a world animate with gods and devils, elves and witches, full of strange influences, of good to be implored, of evil to be rejected. Slavery, then, was to him the dark triumph of evil over him. All the hateful powers of the underworld were striving against him, and a spirit of revolt and revenge filled his heart. He called up all the resources of nature to aid exorcism and witchcraft, the mysterious Obi worship with its barbarous rites, spells, and blood sacrifice even now and then of human victims. Weird midnight orgies and mystic conjugations were invoked. The witch woman and the voodoo priest became the center of Negro group life, and that vein of vague superstition which characterizes the unlettered Negro even today was deepened and strengthened. In spite, however, of such success as that of the fierce Maroons in Jamaica, the Danish blacks, and others, the spirit of revolt gradually died away under the untiring energy and superior strength of the slave masters. By the middle of the 18th century, the black slave had sunk with hushed murmurs to his place at the bottom of a new economic system and was unconsciously ripe for a new philosophy of life. Nothing suited his condition then better than the doctrine of passive submission embodied in the newly learned Christianity. Slave masters early realized this and cheerfully aided religious propaganda within certain bounds. The long system of repression and degradation of the Negro tended to emphasize the elements in his character which made him a valuable piece of property. Courtesy became humility, moral strength degenerated into submission, and the exquisite native appreciation of the beautiful became an infinite capacity for suffering. The Negro, losing the joy of this world, eagerly seized upon the offered conceptions of the next, the avenging spirit of the Lord enjoining patience in this world under sorrow and tribulation until the great day when God would lead his dark children home. This became his comforting dream. His preacher repeated the prophecy, and his poet sang, "Children, we shall be free when the Lord shall appear." This deep religious fatalism, painted so beautifully in Uncle Tom's Cabin, came soon to breed, as all fatalistic faiths will, the sensualist side by side with the martyr. Under the lax moral life of the plantation, where marriage was a farce, laziness a virtue, and property a theft, a religion of resignation and submission degenerated easily in less strenuous minds into a philosophy of indulgence and crime. Many of the worst characteristics of the Negro masses of today had their seed in this period of the slave's ethical growth. Here it was that the home was ruined under the very shadow of the church, white and black. Here habits of the shiftless took root, and sullen hopelessness replaced hopeful strife. With the beginning of the abolitionist movement against slavery and the gradual growth of a class of free Negroes came a change. We often neglect the influence of the freed Negro before the war because of the paucity of his numbers and the small weight he had in the history of the United States. But we must not forget that his chief influence was internal and was exerted on the black world, and that there he was the ethical and social leader. Huddled as he was in a few centers like Philadelphia, New York, and New Orleans, the masses of the freed Negroes sank into poverty and listlessness. But not all of them. The free Negro leader early arose, and his chief characteristic was intense earnestness and a deep feeling on the slavery question. Freedom became to him a real thing and not a dream. His religion became darker and more intense, and into his ethics crept a note of revenge, into his songs a day of reckoning close at hand. The coming of the Lord swept this side of death and came to be a thing to be hoped for in this day. Through fugitive slaves and irrepressible discussions, this desire for freedom seized the black million still in bondage and became their one ideal of life. The black poets caught new notes and sometimes even dared to sing, "Oh freedom, oh freedom, oh freedom over me. Before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free." For 50 years, Negro religion thus transformed itself and identified itself with the dream of freedom until that which was a radical fad in the white North and an anarchistic plot in the white South had become a religion to the black world. Thus, when emancipation finally came, it seemed to the freedman a literal coming of the Lord. His fervid imagination was stirred as never before by the tramp of armies, the blood and dust of battle, and the wail and whirl of social upheaval. He stood dumb and motionless before the whirlwind. What had he to do with it? Was it not the Lord's doing? And marveled in his eyes. Joyed and bewildered with what came, he stood awaiting new wonders till the inevitable age of counter-revolution swept over the nation and brought the crisis of today. It is difficult to explain clearly the present critical stage of Negro religion. First, we must remember that living as the blacks do in close contact with a great modern nation and sharing, although imperfectly, the sole life of that nation, they must necessarily be affected more or less directly by the religious and ethical forces that are today moving the United States. These questions and movements are, however, overshadowed and dwarfed by to the Negro all-important question of their civil, political, and economic status. They must perpetually discuss the Negro problem, must live, move, and have their being in it, and interpret all else in its light or darkness. With this come, too, peculiar problems of the inner life of black folk, of the status of women, the maintenance of the home, the training of children, the accumulation of wealth, and the prevention of crime. All this must mean a time of intense ethical ferment, of religious heart-searching and intellectual unrest. From the double life every American must lead, as a Negro and as an American, as swept only by the current of the 19th while yet struggling in the eddies of the 15th century. From this must arise a painful self-consciousness, an almost morbid sense of personality, and a moral hesitancy which is fatal to self-consciousness. The worlds within and without the veil of the color line are changing, and changing rapidly, but not at the same rate, not in the same way, and in this must produce a peculiar wrenching of the soul, a peculiar sense of doubt and bewilderment. Such a double life, with double thoughts, double duties, and double social classes must give rise to double words and double ideals and tempt the mind to pretense or to revolt, to hypocrisy or to radicalism. In some such doubtful words and phrases can one perhaps most clearly picture the peculiar ethical paradox that faces the Negro people of today and is tinging and changing his religious life. Feeling that his rights and his dearest ideals are being trampled upon, that the public conscience is ever more deaf to his righteous appeal, and that all the reactionary forces of prejudice, greed, and revenge are daily gaining new strength and fresh allies, the Negro faces no enviable dilemma. Conscious of his impotence and pessimistic, he often becomes bitter and vindictive, and his religion, instead of a worship, is a complaint and a curse, a wail rather than a hope, a sneer rather than a faith. On the other hand, another type of mind, shrewder and keener and more torturous too, sees in the very strength of the anti-Negro movement its patent weaknesses, and with Jesuitic casuistry is deterred by no ethical considerations in the endeavor to turn his weakness to the black man's strength. Thus we have two great and hardly irreconcilable streams of thought and ethical strivings. The danger, the one lies in anarchy, that of the other in hypocrisy. The one type of Negro stands almost ready to curse God and die, and the other is too often found a traitor to what is right and a coward before the force of the white world. The one is wedded to ideals remote, whimsical, perhaps impossible of realization. The other forgets that life is more than meat and and the body more than raiment. But after all, is not this simply the writhing of an age translated into black? The triumph of the lie, which today with its false culture faces the hideousness of the anarchistic assassination. I'll end there.
We're going to take a quick break, and then all the people on the lines right now, 215-634-8065, 215-634-8065, or toll free, 866-361-0900. The Year of Du Bois. I am Aaron Smith, the rapping professor. She is Queen Kuwaisa, super producer. Put some respect on her name, and we're going to the phone lines right after the break, y'all, and you are waking up with word, y'all.
At Moravia Health Home Care Agency, patients and family are cared for with respect, compassion, and empathy. The caregiver staffed at Moravia Health are experienced, bonded, and insured. Caring for loved ones is the #1 priority of all of their patients. If you're looking for a warm, caring, respected, professional, and affordable home health care agency, Moravia Health is your new home. Make a change today. Call Moravia Health at 215-717-8650 or visit moraviahealth.com. Moravia Health, because there's no place like home.
Real ID is coming. Are you ready? Real ID is a federal requirement that affects how all states issue driver's licenses and ID cards. After October 1, 2020, you will need a Real ID or another TSA-approved form of ID to board all flights or enter federal facilities that require ID. Real IDs will be available in spring 2019, but you can pre-verify now. It's easy. Learn how at penn.gov/realid. Paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
Leo's is having a Black Friday special sale. All fall and winter clothing has been reduced. Check out our new shipment of leather coats, half off for Black Friday only. All hats are 20% off. Buy one suit, get the second suit half price. Leo's is a one-stop shop from head to toe for men and boys, and the largest shoe, hat, and cap selection in North Philadelphia. There are 2 locations to serve you. Tommy's at 2917 North 22nd Street and Leo's at 2705 Germantown Avenue.
Listening to Wake Up with Word on Word Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD, Independent Black Media.
Independent Black Media, 900 AM, 96.1 FM, WURD, WURDradio.com. Listen live anytime and log on. I am the host of the show, Aaron Smith, the rapping professor. She is Queen Kuwaisa, super producer. Put some respect on her name and go to WURDradio.com. Listen live anytime and log on. Get that app like you know. In the Year of Du Bois, going to the phone lines. First up, Pam Africa. Good morning, and thank you for waking up with Word.
Yes, good morning. And I love waking up with Word, especially your show. And Brother Tony Montero is on. I just want to let y'all know, first off, I am 72 years old today.
Happy birthday.
Foresight. Yes, indeed. And, you know, when Tony was talking about the ministers and, you know, where things is at with, you know, with the boys, I see this same thing happening, you know, in the case with my family and in the case with Mumia. You had this worldwide support, and there's really no reason why this brother should be sitting in jail. But let me tell you what we're doing on December the 8th in regards to that, and I really want you to, Tony, to come and be a part, is dealing with the prisons. And, you know, not only as the aspect of how it's dealing with Mumia, but all these different problems that we're having, you know, right now. And on the 9th, we're doing an ecumenical service. And, you know, dealing with, and, you know, and that's people of all faiths coming together. But the issue is December the 9th is when they tried to kill Mumia. And, you know, what has been brought forth, you know, since then, he did a book called Faith of Our Fathers. And that dealt with, you know, the ministry and, you know, where things is at, you know, right now in a revolutionary way.
And you know something, Pam? You know, knowing Mumia as I do, if I'm literally the same part of North Philadelphia, you know, I know that Mumia is a profound student, I'll put it that way, and one who appreciates deeply W.E.B. Du Bois.
Oh, yes.
And when he writes that of the faith of the fathers, it's really taken from the title of this chapter in The Souls of Black Folk. So Oh, yeah, but the other thing, if I might just comment upon it, what you said, these two tendencies in the black church, one which goes back to the defeat of the African on these shores, which leads to a Christianity of submission, and the other is that tendency, and we saw it in Father Washington, we see it in Pastor Renee McKenzie and others, that spirit of rebellion, of liberation theology, as we call it today.
Right, I agree 100%. And but yesterday, I got a phone call from people who said that Reverend Al Sharpton wanted me to call in to give him an update on Mumia.
Oh, good.
I didn't have a number, but I am going to call him. But I am going to ask him, because we need to bring attention to what is going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
And, because nobody had a right to commit murder, and that's what they're doing with Mumia. That's what they're doing, with my family. And, and other people that's in the prison. So this ecumenical service and going back to the Bois, and I like to frame it around. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm organizing on the phone, but I'm going to call. And you know what? This is the first call I made today.
Yes.
And I purposely did it, and because I did want to call in on your show. I really, really appreciate, WURD and their lineup. I love Theory in the Martin, in the morning, and Steph Renee, and a lot of people. You are an extraordinary person. You are very extraordinary. I keep listening back on those tapes from when Wilson Good and everyone else was on, and you're fair, and because you allow both sides to be, heard, and you also speak out. And yesterday I heard someone call in, and they were sort of upset because you had someone on. I was
City controller
on another phone, and they wanted to know why would you have her on. I believe it was a she. And I wanted to get in and chime in on that. And in order to fight a battle, you must see, because what the caller knew, what you knew and I knew, it's a whole lot of people who don't know. That person can go to them and say the same things, and they'll see it as believable.
No, I hear you.
But behind listening to the show, them putting it out, and that caller who called in who had good information, you had good information, a lot of people learned something. Me, I like to do battle with people. When I do a lot of radio shows, and they say, "Oh man, those are the cold-blooded racists." I said, "Line them suckers up," because that's who I want to teach them, and I want to teach the people that is listening, because everybody ain't hardcore, to the bone.
Now, here, we got a lot of callers to get to, too, Pam, so we're going to make sure you call in to Al Sharpton's show as well. Salute to Pam Africa and the Move Organization. Mo from North Philly, we have Mo on the line. Thank you for waking up with Word also.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
Peace. What I want to ask Dr. Montero, looking at the economic condition of our people, what is it, why is that we as black people don't have like a area, of a city that we can call our own? And it seems that sometimes when you talk about doing that, you got some black people, the first thing they said is they believe in one humanity, they don't see color, and they believe in the multiculturalism and diversity. Mm-hmm. And it seems like to me like the multiculturalism and diversity is deaf to the Afro-American people.
Well, there are a lot of black people who are delusional, and they put what they hope for ahead of what is.
Right.
And Mo, we've known each other for many decades, and you and I have devoted a great deal of time to the study of world events and of national events. And the greatness of Du Bois is this elevation of the study of the actual conditions of African Americans, rather than a kind of interrogation of what we want African Americans to be. And we got these tendencies among us. Like he points out in this essay that I just read from, there is the tendency towards submission, and this goes back to slavery. But then there is that tendency of rebellion, of resistance, and that is, I think, as strong, although it does not get the attention of the popular media as much as those who are delusional and have accepted submissively to accept our status as it is.
Yeah, because I see like being a Muslim, and I don't knock anybody that's an atheist, because I don't understand reason why. And I see as a Muslim in Islam, I see also in Christianity, a lot of our people think that if we let these foreigners come over here and use us, whether they from Asia, Africa, the Caribbean, Central and Latin America.
Yeah, a lot of that. But a lot of that represents a hopelessness that, again, we have to, in a sense, have a certain empathy for the conditions of our people, especially the working class and poor black people. In a time like this, most of us attempt to cling to religion, as they would call it, the old-time religion, the spiritual world. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. The question is to undergird the ethical and spiritual life world of black people with a sense of political realism. And I know, Mo, we got some other callers we got to get in here, if you don't mind, my brother.
Thank you, Mo, for calling up. That's all the time we have today. Shouts out to Olu and Mohammed. Sorry we couldn't get y'all in. Make sure that you chime in and get your calendars right. December 1st is going to be the Empowerment Experience. Ayanna Van Zant, Art Street Meeting House. Get your tickets. Go on the website. Call the number 215-425-7875. I am the rapping professor. She is Queen Kawesa, super producer. Put some respect on her name. And it's going to be an amazing day because you woke up the right way. You see, the sun is shining even brighter by the time the show ends. And that's just the way it is on WURD.